Now, with the Australian Horizons Foundation, I got approached, would have been about 5 months ago, and I was aware of this organisation, but I didn't realise what it did, what it's done and where it's going. The Australian Horizons Foundation, it formed in 2011 by an absolute rural stalwart, Nylene Eichen. It is now run by a board. They're all based in Cairns. I'm the only one down here in the southeast. And the chairman is John Bethel. We also have directors Penny Johnson, Joseph Lockyer and Neil Newton, who's our CEO. It's as simple as that, the National Foundation for Rural Australia. What I like about it is a couple of things. What we primarily do is raise funds through a number of different pillars. That's art unions. We also have a business supporters club, a million members club. We also have an electricity brokerage. If you want cheaper electricity, talk to me. You get a quote, go through it. If you save money and you change providers, a donation goes back to the Australian Horizons Foundation. Other things that we have is an NBN brokerage as well, particularly out in rural Australia. And we've just launched a Charity of Choice partners, and we've got a big announcement coming up in a few weeks in relation to that. Now, besides the front page, you'll see on the second page, right? There are 6 different areas that we focus in on. One is community, business, education, health, humanitarian and water. Now, these are particularly in rural communities. Now, what we do, the funds we raise, and I'm proud to say that since March 2017, we've donated $5.1 million. 5.1 million. Some examples of that you'll see on the third page down the bottom. Who's a returned serviceman here in the room? 1, 2. Yeah, Malcolm. So we've donated $170,000 in the last 2 years to Wounded Heroes Australia. They do a wonderful job. They're on the bones of their bum. It's about December last year, and Bethel got a call, our chairman, and we wrote a cheque for $100,000. Some other things that I'll focus in on, aubogmate.com.au. A lady by the name of Mary O'Brien, I believe, Jill, is an outstanding individual. There are 8 suicides a day, particularly in rural Australia, that's happening. Men, sorry, just that doesn't include statistics of women. Now, particularly in rural communities, what happened, we fund Mary to the tune of $200,000 a year. What she does is go around all of Australia, particularly rural Australia, and does a workshop. And she talks about being in a box. And she's just a wonderful human. Mary will be there next Tuesday night if you can make it as well. Another one I'm quite proud of is the Otis Foundation in Bendigo, Victoria. We wrote a cheque for $500,000 in October last year. Obviously because of COVID, people couldn't go and whatever. But that is a retreat for women who are suffering breast cancer. Look, I could go on. The Rotary Clubs, we donated money to buy hay with the farmers. So this is why I'm passionate about this. I eat, sleep, breathe the Australian Horizons Foundation. The other thing that I'll finish on is these are some stuff that it makes my blood boil. And people in the southeast, whether it's they're not educated, whether they don't care, I'll let you decide. We also have a research side that focuses in on government policy, on the practical implications to what happens to farmers. There's no votes out in the regions. If you look at the breakdown of the Queensland Parliament, there are 93 seats. And if you break that down, 85% of seats are in the southeast, which cover 15% of the landmass. Then the rest of the seats cover 85% of the landmass. So a Brisbane-centric policy is being dictated to by people that feed us, that clothe us. I mean, this is lunacy. You talk about craziness of government. If you have friends or family out in rural Australia, particularly in Queensland, there are babies being born on the side of the road. Chinchilla's a prime example. They don't have birthing facilities. Can you imagine that happening in Brisbane?
They used to have them.
They used to have them. They have closed. That's just one example.
State government.
Yep, absolutely. 6 times higher to die. That's why people are moving to the southeast. No decentralisation of government policy. I don't care which government is in. However, it's good policy outcome for the people that feed us and the fibre for our clothes. This is the big one, right? And I talk about this all the time, everywhere I go. You have what you call the Vegetation Management Act of Queensland. You also have the Great Barrier Reef Environmental Protection Act of 2019. Let me give you some examples. Under those 2 acts of Parliament, you have to pay 2 lots of fees if you are covered by those acts with your land holding, right? So, for example, if you are in the Great Barrier Reef catchment area, which I believe, and this isn't political, is based on flawed science, it's an ideology. If you have over 5 acres and you've got cropping, you now have satellite imagery every fortnight monitoring your vegetation. So, for example, if you have 5 acres and if you have 50% ground cover, that is weed, and the Act says that you can't cultivate it, you can't manage your land, you can't touch it. Mulga's another example. I mean, this is what is going on. It is absolute lunacy. Then they get consultants in to make sure that you've got enough ground cover. So this is what's going on and attributing to what's happening. Then if your land doesn't comply with the government acts, you get a restoration notice, which simply means in English, you have to restore your land to what the government think that is acceptable. I mean, if you could write a book on this, you'd be a billionaire. The other thing, then you get fined if you don't comply. The fines are up to $261,000. You talk about property rights. They don't own the land anymore. This is what's going on. So when we don't have food, in 5 to 20 years, no young farmers coming through, don't blame me. You vote for what you get. I don't care if you're blue or red. You make good policy decisions that we can feed ourselves. It's all right now. Everyone's in cruise zone. You go to Coles, Woolies or out in the southeast.
Half of it's imported anyway.
Correct. The other thing is technology. A lot of these people don't have basic mobile phone technology. They don't have NBN. Right? So how can you there's one area up near, and I'll finish on this, where Johnny's up at Forsyth. And for example, with him, I've got to ring him on his Wi-Fi. I can't ring him on his mobile. And he's 40k outside the town. Can you imagine that? This is what I bang on about all the time. What we have done as a foundation is great, but it's a Band-Aid solution. So when we don't have food, when we don't have proper farmers providing, and it's great that you come out, I bang about this all the time. I could be down the pub with the kids out, and people just don't get it. But I can tell you, we're fighting. We ain't going anywhere. And I have a dream and a vision to create change over the next 3.5 years to where this goes. And I will tell you, we will not stop, whatever that may be. And for those that know me like Jill, I can be a bit colourful off the record as well. So, and the other thing, to Jill Burby's, another reason I took on this role, my son beat cancer 10 months ago. And, what we've also done for families with kids, and it breaks my heart. That's another reason why I did it. So, in a nutshell, if you'd like to come along, great. If not, that's a great too, because I'm hammering these politicians about policy outcome for the bush. And thank you for your time.